Hey everybody, Margie's back here with Kobe.
Hi again. Welcome back to Margie's Mic.
I decided to tell a little story for my friends in Germany and all my Air Force and Army friends all over the world about when we were stationed at Ramstein.
Well, that's going to be an adventure.
Yeah, it was. It was great fun.
Let's hear it.
I call this the Gates of Paradise. Some of you may know Ramstein Air Force Base as the sad destination where so many of our troops are brought on their final journey home to America from such far-off places as Iraq and Afghanistan. I was there, however, on a much happier mission. Being a newlywed, my dashing Air Force husband and I were searching for our first little dream home to set up camp in while he pursued his mission of making the Air Force paperless. Lo and behold, after a couple of days of seeing red-flocked wallpaper and shaky-looking plumbing, cows in the front yard, some of these yards were so small, the cows didn't just look in the window, they stuck their heads in the window. I was feeling some despair. No way the husband's going to live on the base, but the realtor said, I have one more stop in mind for you. All of a sudden, we were standing at the front gate of a 2-acre bit of paradise. There were fruit trees and a terraced garden and a charming older couple who bore a striking resemblance to Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus waving at the gate. Herr Hermann Kern and his bride of some 40-plus years, Frau Wilhelmina, smiled proudly as the realtor translated the tour. The house at the front of the property had belonged to her mother, and they had no designs to rent it. However, Oma had passed on to her just reward. So now their lovely daughter Elka, who lived with them in the other house, were looking, and not without reservations, for the perfect quote-unquote American couple. I sensed that this quote-unquote audition would be one of my most difficult to date. I tried to contain my growing excitement as the tour unfolded. Top floor, 2-bedroom, window box type windows, master bath with, saints preserve us, it's a miracle, the unheard luxury in those German villages of a master bath with a separate garden tub. I liked and wanted this place already. We had no furniture whatsoever, but my imagination was running wild with visions of shopping at flea markets all over Europe to create a picture-perfect home. As we left through the ground floor back door, my husband announced, and this is going to be the recording studio, the most luxurious recording studio I could imagine. It had French doors that opened onto the terrace garden and a huge patio to sit upon. The view from there was of an alley with large, stately plane trees, their silver leaves shining in the September sun. This is the place, the alley, the realtor said for you. We call it the promenade. This is the place for you to walk the dog. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Claus's faces changed in an instant from pleasant to absolute chagrin and unmasked anxiety. Oh, nein, this cannot be. A Hund. He will ruin the place, scratch the floors. Oh, nein, this cannot be. Well, there was nothing else to do except look to the realtor for guidance. Excusing ourselves on the way back to the headquarters, officers' barracks where we were staying, I looked pleadingly and mutely at Mrs. Kern. Her entire life must have flashed before her as she clutched a white handkerchief to her brow and tried to compose herself. As we were hustled briskly to the front gate, I saw Santa Claus, Herr Kern, give me a sly wink. What was that? I thought. Oh no. Please, saints in heaven, don't tell me he's flirting with me, or worse yet, could he be a lustful, reincarnated version of Santa Claus? With relief, I told myself as I climbed into the back seat of the Mercedes, it's just as well. I don't need to live anywhere that weird, and I don't need to be around anyone who hates dogs, that for sure. It just felt wrong on so many levels. As we hit the Autobahn, the husband, quite in his element now, going into problem-solving mode, and without consulting me in the back seat, said, what the hell just happened there? He and determined realtor quickly came up with a plan. They simply have to meet the dog. By now I was getting hungry and my blood sugar being low, somewhat irritated, and said to them, he isn't just a dog. He is a dignified and talented little black spirit, more intelligent than a lot of people I've met. But you're absolutely correct, of course. They just have to meet the dog. He's a 7-pound wonder of the world. They'll be immediately smitten, as everyone who meets him is. At that moment, the realtor pulled off to a phone booth. Now, this was before cell phones, kids. Can you imagine the inconvenience? A couple of hours later, we were releasing the Hound from his kennel on the Air Force Base and turning it around to join Mr. and Mrs. Klaus for a luncheon of Wiener Schnitzel and international diplomacy. 10 days into the settling in process, I wondered where the new landlords were. They had not surfaced at all since I moved in. Did they dislike Americans? I knew they had had no interactions at all with Americans and stated firmly during the closing that if we wanted to communicate with them, we would have to speak German. There was no way they were going to learn to speak English. As I put away the last of my dishes in my lovely little kitchen, I saw through the window Mrs. Kern and her daughter with flowers and fresh pastries. We sat in the kitchen and smiled mutely through my pitiful attempts to communicate. Rats, I thought, this is going to be the longest 2 years of my life. But at least the Frau and Fraulein were smiling as my puppy sat on his haunches like a little bear, crying real tears for a crumb or two of the pastries.